Laudetur Jesus Christus. Vatican and World News.
In the headlines this Friday, January 29th, Pope Francis calls on missionaries to put compassion at the heart of their ministry. Russia's most prominent opposition leader protests what he says is his illegal detention by authorities. And Nigerian farmers win a landmark court case against oil giant Shell, setting the stage for more cases against multinationals. In the Vatican, I'm Francesca Merlo. Pope Francis's message for World Mission Day, which is marked on the 24th of October this year, was released earlier today. In it, the Pope underlines that amid this pandemic, there is the need for a mission of compassion. Lydia O'Kane reports.
We cannot but speak about what we have seen and heard. Taken from the Acts of the Apostles, is the theme chosen by Pope Francis for World Mission Day 2021, which will be observed on October the 24th. In the message released on Friday, the Pope emphasises that once we experience the power of God's love and recognise his fatherly presence in our personal and community life, we cannot help but proclaim and share what we have seen and heard. Experiencing the Lord's friendship, compassion and teaching, says the Pope, left an indelible mark on the apostles, awakening amazement, expansive joy and a profound sense of gratitude. The Pope points out that with Jesus, we too have seen, heard and experienced that things can be different. However, Pope Francis stresses that life can be difficult. The book of Acts, he says, teaches us to endure hardship by clinging firmly to Christ. Amid this pandemic, underlines the Pope, when there is a temptation to disguise and justify indifference and apathy with the name of healthy social distancing, there is urgent need for the mission of compassion, which can make that necessary distancing an opportunity for encounter, care and promotion. In our present circumstances, he continues, there is an urgent need for missionaries of hope who, anointed by the Lord, can provide a prophetic reminder that no one is saved by himself. In his message, Pope Francis describes the theme of this year's World Mission Day as a summons to each of us to own and to bring to others what we bear in our hearts. On the day, which is celebrated each year on the third Sunday of October, Pope Francis observes that it is an opportunity to recall with gratitude all those men and women who, by their testimony of life, help us to renew our baptismal commitment to be generous and joyful apostles of the Gospel. Concluding his message, Pope Francis stresses that always, but especially in these times of pandemic, it is important to grow in our daily ability to widen our circle, to reach out to others who, albeit physically close to us, are not immediately part of our circle of interests. To be on mission, he adds, is to be willing to think as Christ does, to believe with him that those around us are also my brothers and sisters. I'm Lydia O'Kane.
Pope Francis also received the members of the Apostolic Tribunal of the Roman Rota on Friday at the start of their judicial year. He urged them to consider the good of the family, especially of children, in their decision-making on matrimonial nullity. Father Benedict Mayaki tells us more.
Pope Francis on Friday addressed the officials of the Tribunal of the Roman Rota on the occasion of the inauguration of their judicial year. The tribunal is the Church's highest court that handles appeals of marriage annulment cases. It also deals with other judicial and non-administrative cases related to canon law. In his message, the Pope held up the theme of Christian matrimony, recalling his message to the tribunal officials last year. He also highlighted that the good of the family, especially that of children, should be considered even beyond the situations of matrimonial nullity. The Pope said that it is always the case that the blessed fruit of the conjugal pact cannot be extinguished with the declaration of nullity, because one cannot consider being a family as a suspended good, especially since it is the fruit of the divine plan. The Pope went on to draw attention to the predicament of children in marriages that have been legally declared null and void, especially when one of the parties in the marriage is not willing to accept the declaration of nullity. He stressed that the family is the basis of society and continues to be the most appropriate structure for ensuring that people receive the integral good necessary for their permanent development. He therefore insisted that it is necessary to consider the integral good of children in situations of breakups. The Pope went on to highlight that the Church has a useful pastoral tool in the apostolic exhortation Amoris Laetitia, which gives clear indications that no one, especially the children, should be left alone or treated as a means of blackmail between parents. Further addressing the tribunal officials, the Pope urged them not to fail to bear witness to this apostolic anxiety of the Church considering that the integral good of persons requires that we must not remain inactive in the face of the disastrous effects that a decision on matrimonial nullity can entail. Pope Francis then seized the opportunity to address bishops to be ever more open to the challenge connected to this issue in their jurisdictions. He encouraged them to pursue an ecclesiological and pastoral path aimed at not leaving the faithful to the sole intervention of civil authorities. He further emphasized that bishops' collaborators, in particular the vicar for the judiciary, priests, and those working in the area of pastoral care for the family, should strive to exercise the service of care and accompaniment of abandoned spouses and children who suffer the effects of matrimonial nullity. I'm Father Benedict Mayaki.
Ahead of the World Day of Prayer for Consecrated Life, a US-based research center details the characteristics of religious men and women who profess vows in 2020. According to new research conducted by the Center for Applied Research in the Apostolate, CARA, most religious men and women who profess their perpetual vows in 2020 are highly educated, come from a Catholic family background, and have first considered vocation at a relatively young age. The research was commissioned by the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops Committee on Clergy, Consecrated Life and Vocations, ahead of the annual World Day of Prayer for Consecrated Life to be marked on the 2nd of February. The bishops of the United States have raised their voices in opposition to a new executive order signed on Thursday by President Joe Biden. The order reverses a ban on federal funds being given to foreign healthcare providers that support and perform abortions. As Devin Watkins reports, the move came as the annual March for Life is held online.
U.S. President Joe Biden signed an executive order on Thursday allowing federal funds for organizations involved in abortions in developing nations. His order canceled the so-called Mexico City policy, which barred the use of taxpayer funds for organizations which perform abortions, offer abortion counseling, or advocate for so-called abortion rights. In response, the Catholic Bishops' Conference of the United States released a statement lamenting the executive order. It is grievous that one of President Biden's first official acts actively promotes the destruction of human lives in developing nations, they said. The bishops added that they strongly oppose President Biden's reversal of the policy. This executive order is antithetical to reason, violates human dignity, and is incompatible with Catholic teaching, they wrote. We urge the president to use his office for good, prioritizing the most vulnerable, including unborn children. The U.S. bishops also noted that the Church is the largest non-government health care provider in the world. As such, they added, the Catholic Church stands ready to work with President Biden and his administration to promote global women's health in a manner that furthers integral human development, safeguarding innate human rights and the dignity of every human life beginning in the womb. The bishops concluded by saying that care must start with ensuring that the unborn are free from violence, recognizing every person as a child of God. President Biden's executive order came just a day ahead of the annual March for Life, which is taking place in a virtual format on Friday. The yearly event typically sees thousands gather in Washington and elsewhere to promote a culture that respects life from conception to natural death, as well as to voice opposition to abortion. On Friday, Pope Francis tweeted his support for efforts to protect life. The culture of life is the heritage that Christians want to share with everyone, he tweeted. Every human life, unique and unrepeatable, is priceless. This must be courageously proclaimed ever anew through word and action. I'm Devin Watkins.
In India, thousands of farmers overwhelmed police in central Delhi, eventually storming the city's historic Red Fort on India's Republic Day on the 26th of January. Angry with agricultural reforms they fear will benefit large private buyers at the expense of growers, tens of thousands of farmers have been camped peacefully at sites on the outskirts of Delhi for more than 2 months. Russia's most prominent opposition leader, who survived poisoning with a nerve agent, has condemned his detention as blatantly illegal. Alexei Navalny made the comments at an appeal hearing via a video link. As Stefan Boss reports, massive protests are planned against his detention.
It's perhaps not usual to hear piano music during a police raid. But that's what happened when Anastasia Vadolyeva decided to play her piano defiantly. The doctor of detained opposition leader Alexei Navalny was confronted by a police officer reading out an official document and demanding that she sign it. She's among several Navalny aides targeted by Russian security forces, raiding apartments and other properties related to Navalny. Even his brother Oleg was detained. But at an appeals hearing, Navalny made clear he will not end his anti-corruption campaign against Russian President Vladimir Putin and other Kremlin officials. In recent days, his group published a video of a near $1.4 billion Black Sea palace allegedly owned by Putin, though the Kremlin denies the charges. Navalny spoke at an appeals hearing where a judge heard and then rejected his appeal against preliminary detention for 30 days. You won't manage to frighten dozens of millions of people who were robbed by those in power, even though those people who are now under arrest face hardships, he says. Navalny referred to reports that thousands of people were detained when police used force to break up anti-Putin rallies across Russia, demanding his release. Despite last weekend's riots, more protests are planned. Alexei Navalny was detained on January 17th for allegedly not complying with conditions surrounding a suspended prison sentence on what his supporters view as trumped-up embezzlement charges. If convicted, he may face 3.5 years in prison. For Vatican News, I am Stefan Bos, reporting.
Myanmar members of parliament are set to take up their seats on Monday as escalating tension between the civilian government and the powerful military stirs fears of a coup in the aftermath of an election the army says was fraudulent. The army has said it plans to take action if its complaints about the election are not addressed, and a spokesman this week declined to rule out the possibility of a coup. And finally, a Dutch court today ordered the Nigerian subsidiary of Shell to pay compensation over oil spills in Nigeria's Niger Delta. The ruling is significant also because it could pave the way for more cases against multinational oil firms. Linda Bordoni reports.
A Dutch court on Friday ordered Shell to pay compensation in a long-running case brought by 4 Nigerian farmers who accused the oil giant of causing widespread pollution. After 13 years of legal wrangling, an appeals court in The Hague ruled that Shell's Nigerian branch must pay out for oil spills on land in 2 villages. It also held the Anglo-Dutch parent company Royal Dutch Shell liable for installing new pipeline equipment to prevent further devastating spills in the Niger Delta region. The case, backed by the Netherlands arm of environment group Friends of the Earth, has dragged on so long that 2 of the Nigerian farmers have died since it was filed in 2008. The amount of compensation will be established at a later date, and the court did not specify how many of the 4 farmers would receive their money. It also did not hold Shell's parent company, which is headquartered in the Netherlands, directly responsible. But Shell is in the eye of the storm, as in a separate case also in the Netherlands, the widows of 4 Nigerian activists executed by the military regime in the 1990s have accused Shell of complicity in their deaths, and it is facing a landmark legal bid to force it to meet emissions targets in the Paris Climate Accords brought forward by several environmental groups. I'm Linda Bordoni.
And that brings us to the end of this edition of Vatican and World News. For more on these and other stories, please be sure to visit our web portal at www.vaticannews.va. Many thanks go to Gustavo Messina in studio. In the Vatican, I'm Francesca Merlo.